I've nearly got everything working. Hello, everyone. um, the challenge I was given, uh, just about, I don't know how long it was ago, like, just 3 minutes ago, was I mentioned to people that chicken cam might not be able to work. And, turns out it does. But I just needed to hook up my phone to to hook up my phone to work with this setup. So you can see here I've got 3 cameras going now. That one there, which is pointed at my face, hello, is actually my phone hooked up to my computer. There are cables going everywhere at the moment because my computer's all the way over there. But my miniature painting setup is over here, as you can see. So, so yeah, there's just a lot of stuff going on. Hi all, how are we doing? Hope you're ready for the stream. We're going to, I mean, and with all that, chicken's not even there. Chicken cam doesn't look like it usually looks. I don't know if I've got the zoom settings slightly different on this camera than normal, but we'll see. Or maybe I've usually got it higher up. Anyway, it's still aimed at the spot, so she'll probably be there sooner or later. So today is different from my usual streams in that the usual streams are, I guess, the most common thing that I've been doing on the streams is gaming. Sorry, just get rid of the jumper for the moment. Yeah, so what I've been doing most of the time is like either playing computer games or just talking about stuff. And I've talked to people quite a few times about the fact that I paint miniatures, I get into Warhammer and stuff like that, and people were saying, why don't you do a stream on that? And it's like, yeah, that's actually, I could totally do that. That's actually the thing that, whatchamacallit, that I used to do a lot. Like, that was how I discovered live streaming, which is actually slightly different from, I think most people, your first connection with Twitch is more likely to be, just watching people play games. But for me, it was watching people paint miniatures. Realize that the microphone, that didn't help at all. The edge of the microphone is still on the edge of that camera. That camera's cable is stretched all the way to its limit. If I touch anything wrong in this setup at the moment, all the cables are just going to pull each other over. The expensive lamp is going to come crashing down onto the desk, and all these kinds of things are going to go wrong. So, trying to make it so that that lamp isn't blasting straight into the iPhone camera. But we'll have to live with it, I think. Literally got this set up like just a couple of seconds ago. Just installed some software so that I can use my phone camera as a camera source for OBS. Looks really good, actually. It looks much clearer than my other cameras. But I guess that's the thing. The webcams are, I don't know, like $100, $200 each. Whereas the iPhone's like over $1,000. Oh, Nick's saying you need to get Discord permissions to show your painting. Oh, I don't have that set up so that you can stream from there, I think. Alright, I've set it up so that people can stream video in the voice channel if they want. Hi Nick, also, not sure if you're broadcasting audio there or not. I assume that you aren't for the moment. Let's have a look at what Nick's streaming. Oh wait, you're not yet. Okay, so what I'm gonna do today is I was laughing at this because like I can't just paint miniatures on stream, right? I'm gonna end up doing something overboard. So it was like, all right, let's do a whole kind of lesson setup. So here I have 3 different models. So one of them is an empty base and a bunch of pieces. So I'm going to start off with building as the first part of the stream tonight. Second part of the stream, I have one that I've prepared earlier. So this one has been spray painted with primer black. So it's not going to show up very well on the camera because it's all black. And I'm going to show you how I do the kind of first colors, the base colors as we call them, which is like for this one's pretty easy. Space Marines are like the generic troops of Warhammer 40,000. A lot of them are the one color, so a lot of the models are the one color. So I'm going to show you me doing a bit of that, and then on this one, which already has a lot of that stuff done to it, so you can see I've got this blue metallic paint that I've used for the armor there. You can see that kind of catches the light quite nicely, so looks pretty cool. So I'm going to take the middle one to this point, and then, well, maybe not quite to this point, but at least with the blue, and then I'll swap over to this one, and I'll do some detailing and stuff. I've already done a little bit of detailing there on that little gun holster, but I'll do stuff like these pipes on the back. They have these purity seals there, which you can kind of see on the shoulder. I have lots of little fiddly things that I can do depending on where that window just popped up. I just clicked on the video settings, but I don't know where they are. So there's settings where I can change the oh wait, wrong one. This camera. I'm fiddling around with lots of different things at the moment. So I've got it so that I can do different levels of focus. So I show you a couple of models that I've already finished, but what I'm going to try to do is show them to you large. I've got fixed focus on this camera, so this is it's not exactly the same model as you can see. They're slightly different. This one has a big gun and this one has big hands, so they're a little bit different. So this is roughly what I'm going to be wanting for the finished product. So I don't think we're going to get to the point where I do the base tonight, but you can kind of see there's a little bit of detail there. I think that's good focus here. And you can see how I've got the metallic armor, but also like the rusty dirt in amongst the feet and stuff like that. I don't know how far we'll get into all of this, because like if I was to do a 2-hour stream, then I wouldn't finish one of these, I think. So that's how one of them looks, and I've got another one here. They're in the same army, so I do want them to look cohesive, so they have a similar look to them. So the particular army that this is from, they're known as the Crimson Fists. So as far as I remember, the story is that their leader was the leader of what was called the Imperial Fists, but then he's like long dead, and the symbol that they chose was his bloodied fist, which was like one of the final things, something to do with the story of his death or something like that. I don't actually know all of the lore behind them. The thing that I love about them is that they've nearly been wiped out multiple times, and so they have this kind of whatchamacallit, this kind of stoic sort of like defenders against all odds sort of feel to them. So they got a cool kind of feel. So you can kind of see how like the blue armor is really shiny on the top and they're really dusty and dirty on the bottom. So I'll try to get that kind of look going. So these are just a couple of the finished models that I've got from that army. Let me switch my focus back to where you can see the working. I don't have autofocus on because autofocus just kind of tends to panic a lot when I'm working in this, but I've got like just software focus. There you go. So now my focal range is from about here to here, which will probably be where I'm holding things most of the time. I'm going to leave those settings open so that I can tweak them whenever I need. So yeah, you can see the camera setup super fiddly. Because this stuff is so small, Camera's not really made for dealing with content that small. I should see about the iPhone camera, because I wonder if it can do better. But even then, I know, because I take photos of my miniatures with my iPhone camera, and I know like the minimum zoom, sorry, not minimum zoom, minimum focal distance that I can get with the camera is about 8 to 10 centimeters. So it's like you can't really get close enough to these to get them to like fill the frame when you're taking a photo. Alrighty, so let's get into it. I am building and painting Space Marine Primaris Eradicators. So they're saying there's a great parody of Warhammer 40k with Jeb Bush. I haven't seen it, but sounds like it'd probably be pretty funny if it's got Jeb Bush in it. I love how like Jeb Bush and George Bush and stuff just kind of like they get parodied in a really funny way. So like W was like what was it? Which movie was it? It was like Harold and Kumar, I think, the movie. And like it just turns out that like after he's finished being president, all he does is sits around and smokes weed. It's just like pretty funny kind of end point for him. Okay, so I built 2 out of the 3 of these already. See, there's 3 of them there. I've built the leader, and I didn't do him exactly the same. I did him slightly different. And the one with the big double gun has been built. Also slightly different. I've put a particular helmet on him, which I don't know if you can see it. It's like a beaky helm rather than a normal Space Marine helmet. And that places him in a particular era of sort of veterans of Space Marines in a sense. And I like it because it's like the dorky early 90s model, so it's not I don't know what the way I think of it, like it's not as full of itself as the more modern ones. It's still like you can make fun of it and like there's nothing it can do because it has a dorky helmet. Okay, so instructions here usually have all these bits and pieces of how to put it together, because as you can see, this comes in many parts, but you can already see there how there's like a body and 2 legs there, and there's a bunch of different arms, and the arms are used depending on the kind of situation that whether it's gonna they're just kind of the way it's going to be standing or the way it's going to be holding stuff. So generally when I'm finished building here, there's actually going to be quite a few pieces left, but that's cool. It's they often end up being fodder for what we call conversions later, where you can put different bits on a model. I've actually got bits and pieces here that I'm going to put on this model, because there's a Crimson Fist's shoulder there that's actually molded with the fist on it. And that's like the last one I've got left in my collection. So I'm going to use it on this squad, because that way that a few of them in the squad will have the correct shoulder pad. It is very hard to paint that thing without the molded bit. It takes a little bit of time and effort, and I can't be bothered doing that for this group, so they're not going to get that. Okay, so got the instructions here. I'm trying to remember where I was up to, because I'd already put together a few of them, and I think it's this blue one here that I'm putting together now. If it isn't, we'll find out soon. I'll just check the numbers. What is that? The body is like 53, 54. And that's 36, 37, so that's not it. Oh wait, here it is. 53, 54, 55, 56. Okay, so it's this one. It's this one here. Oh, this is obvious. This is gonna get pretty funny, because like what I'm gonna be doing a lot tonight, because I don't usually stream my miniature painting stuff, is I'll be painting something and then it'll like drift out of camera, because the actual space I've got, like this booklet is about an A4 page, the whole booklet, so it's going to be really easy for me to stray out of the working space. So feel free to ping chat if if I'm just going, oh, look at this and this looks really cool, and it's not on screen, because it's going to happen tonight, I'm sure of it. Okay, so I got my instructions there. I'm just going to put them up here. That's not where you can see it, but that's all right. I don't think you're necessarily here for reading the instructions. Oh, tilt the camera further down. Which way down? We're looking at this way, I assume. Because you want to see my working space and not just my rack of paints that's up there. That's Tawaka was saying that. We're pretty close to the edge of my desk, and I tend to work... Yeah, okay, let's tilt it just a little further. It's nearly vertically down now from the lamp. Oh, you can actually see the lamp in that camera. There, in that camera. I've got like 3 different angles into the room right now, and I'm trying to figure out which one's which. Yeah, that camera there, you can actually see this lamp. It's this huge kind of, I don't know, it's like 40-50 centimeter wide LED array, basically, that just shines down here in a really nice way. Makes it so that all the light's really even, but not just even, it's a really specific color temperature of light. So what I'm getting out of this is as close as we can get to like a really pure white. So not a natural white light. Because the thing is that we think of as white light is actually the light of the sun. It's not white. It's quite yellow. And if you paint under that yellow, your colors are going to come out. They'll look fine in daylight, but in any other situation, they may look like bluish. They'll do kind of the opposite of the yellow. I'll talk a little bit about color theory tonight as well. Not much. Not going to do like a whole course on color theory, but there's things that we learn in color theory that can come in handy as well. What do we got there? Halogen said, this makes you want to make models. You do flat sheets and small brick models, but don't have any at the moment. In addition to paper. You were doing some papercraft stuff, right? For a sibling, I think? I remember you saying you were doing a Genshin Impact model for someone. I think that's pretty funny, because that was a conversation that started me thinking about getting into Genshin Impact, and I'm still playing that quite a fair bit at the moment. Oh, another thing pretty funny. My partner and I have gone into full lockdown now. Not just not just like the standard Sydney lockdown. We've had we've been in a shop at the same time, like in our supermarket at the same time as someone who's confirmed COVID. So we're 100% locked down. Like, we're not allowed to leave the house for another week. So yeah. Not that I wasn't eating a lot of delivery food before, but now going to be eating a lot of delivery food. Sorry, I was just going to check. Nick is streaming. Are you streaming, Nick? Oh, wait. Not sure if you are or not. Anyway, yeah, so... see how I am next Monday. It's probably not going to be too bad, I think. Oh, wait, I have to join that first and then watch your stream. Oh, there it is. How do you watch the other person's stream? Usually there's a button you can just click. I can see a tiny version of your screen there. That's right. Oh, no, there it is, there it is. I've got it working now on my other monitor. Oh, I see. Got some Dark Angels going there. If anyone's on the Discord at the moment, you can see Nick streaming his stuff. Let me just... in case people are interested in joining the Discord, I will put the link in YouTube at the moment. Jack's saying you keep seeing your local shops pop up in the exposure list. Yeah, I think there's a lot of that going on at the moment, because there's just... yeah. Oh, wait up. I'm just going to mute and deafen myself on Discord as well, so I'm not sending, like, 2 signals to Nick there. So Nick is painting some Dark Angels, also Space Marines, but of a slightly different tilt from the ones that I am. Okay, so Jack's saying the local shops have been popping up, but not the same time as you. Yeah, we got unlucky, so we're gonna be staying home for a bit. I mean, like, you know, we were in kind of like this general stay-at-home order anyway, so it's not like we'd been going out much, but one usually does still have to go out to go to the supermarket and stuff, but now we can't do that either. So maybe leaning on friends and family to deliver us stuff, but heaps of other stuff can just be purchased and delivered. So we think that we can hang out till next Monday, no problem, because it's 2 weeks from when the contact occurs, so should be all right. Okay, so we are starting with this one, and there's obvious pieces that are going to happen here. So sometimes you don't even need to look at the numbers in the instructions, because I can see the body, the front and back of the body. I'm using these things, little nippers, so they look a little bit like pliers, but they're not really, because they've just got a blade, in a sense. Like, they're not like a pair of scissors in that the blades don't go past each other. I love it. I can do all my hand stuff here. So that they don't go past each other, they just go towards each other. And so what they'll do is they'll basically half cut a piece of this plastic sprue and then allow us to separate pieces. So just cutting. It depends on the level of detail I want to be at, how careful I am with these pieces. I'm not being super careful with these pieces because this is for an army that I am painting at the moment. The irony, which I hope is not going to be ironic, I hope it's going to be fine, is that there's a tournament that's... people know Daniel Mansfield, right? Maths lecturer at UNSW, so him and I are signed up for a tournament in Melbourne. We're going to go down together. I got an Airbnb down there, and we're going to go play in this tournament, if it's happening. Well, I actually think the tournament's going to happen, but the highest risk of something not happening at the moment is not that the tournament won't happen, it's that us in Sydney won't be allowed to actually go to it. So we'll see whether that happens, what that eventuality is. Sorry, I was just reaching over there to get my to get to my blade. This is a pretty standard sort of Stanley knife. I call them Stanley knives. I know in the US they call them X-Acto knives because that was like the brand that happened to be the most famous. You can actually see, if you look closely, the tip's broken off this one because they're pretty fragile, the sharp bit and the tip. But I'm not too worried because I'm not actually going to be doing much carving or cutting with this. But what I am going to be doing is scraping off the mold lines. So the way that this is made is two pieces of metal that sit flush against each other, and then the plastic is squirted into this mold to be made, basically. That means that the two molding pieces of metal are never going to be exactly on each other, in a sense. So there's always going to be a little bit in between where the plastic kind of tries to ooze in between the two pieces of the mold. So when that happens, we're going to get these things called mold lines. I'll show you. You'll see it pretty clearly. Anyone who's done any kind of plastic model kits or anything like that knows about this already, because this is a pretty standard thing. But if you can see it, oh, there you go. If I get the light to reflect off it, you can kind of see it on the heel there. You can see like this vertical line going down it. So I'm going to be doing some scraping to get rid of that line. So it's not going to ruin the model, but when you see these mold lines, like, because if I don't scrape any of them off, they're going to be all over the legs, all over the arms. Anytime there's a long kind of limb, there'll be this obvious line on either side of it, and like, it just kind of, when you're looking at the minis, you try to believe you're seeing this small world kind of thing, and the mold line removes you from that like kind of suspension of disbelief, and then you start to see it as a piece of plastic instead of seeing it as like, oh, I'm looking into this like imaginary world. So we like to do a lot of cleaning and stuff on these just to get them to the point where we're happy enough that they can kind of be believable in a sense. Oh, Halogen's saying Stanley knives are the retractable ones. You're right. This is probably what we'd call a craft knife rather than a Stanley knife. And again, me saying a Stanley knife, that's just another brand name as well. So it's no different from me saying the Americans call it an X-Acto knife. I don't think I've got any Stanley knives here, but like I use this. This is like second to this. That's the brush has just got a plastic cover on it. The thing I use the most is probably the brush, but then this would come second. All right. Next thing, I've got my glue. This is pretty bog standard plastic glue, but it is not the same as super glue. Nicole says scalpel. I think you might be right in that it is much closer to a scalpel than it is a Stanley knife. But Halogen says craft knife. You'd only call it a scalpel in bio. I think if we're gonna say scalpel, I think the thing that we might get there is a curved blade, one designed for cutting humans. It's not a nice way to put it, but yes, for cutting humans. Oh, Donna's asking what makes a competition-winning miniature. That is such a tough question. Usually, what would win a competition is stuff that when you look at it, you can believe the world that it's in, but also at a technical level of expertise as well. So someone who can show off that they can use different techniques, and can and do things at a high enough level of detail to kind of like, you know, when you can see that someone slopped paint on something, it's not like it's the kind of thing that won't necessarily win a competition. Unless it's like, you know, when you think like everything I say here is really funny because I like in the back of my head I'm like yes but no, because you could look like Jackson Pollock and you just go, that is astounding. Like it's astounding nearly to the point of not being able to understand how astounding that is. Yet you kind of look at it and you go, that wasn't technically perfect. It was like a really perfect moment, and the understanding of the kind of humanity behind it is so amazing. So it's really hard when you go like, what is a art competition, you know? But I think a lot of miniature painting competitions, you've got to be very technically proficient to win them, but you also got to be a bit creative as well. It can't just be very, very well executed. Like, it has to look interesting as well. So I'm thinking composition. So it has to draw the human eye around the piece. So a lot of the time when we paint something, it's like you zero in on part of the piece and then your view shifts around it and you see different parts of it. So if you look up art composition, there's a lot of stuff on how the human eye gets drawn around through different imagery. And balance between sides of the same thing and stuff like that. And then you got color theory as well. Like, why is it interesting to see the colors in certain things? So we get a lot of stuff with like the what's known as the color wheels. Lots of different the way that different colors interact with each other. So colors that are very similar to each other, they kind of like nearly harmonize in a sense, but then using colors that are directly opposite to each other is also very interesting and very different. So you get this kind of just really interesting back and forth going on with use of colors. And if you use the colors the right way, you can get some really, really dramatic effects. Belgramir says, basically drip. If you have drip, you win competitions. I don't know if that's exactly the case. Because, like, you know, everything, once people start competing, it gets very much like, you see what can win, and you see why, and then you start working towards that, so it can be a bit weird. Halogen's asking if my cutters cut thin metal. Technically, they could, but I think they wouldn't survive that. I do have my other set of clippers that are like, I don't know, I think these are like nearly 20 years old. You can't, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see that, but the cutting edge on them isn't perfectly flat anymore. There's lots of little dents and chips in it. So this is the one I use when I'm cutting metal. And this is one I use when I'm cutting everything else, so that most of the plastic and resin that I work in gets cut really nice and precisely. But if I'm cutting metal, I just chomp through it with this thing, and I know that this is kind of like, it's like a retired piece. I still use it, but I use it at times where I don't care about what's going on. There's a lot of my stuff like that. Like, I'm going to be using a brush tonight, which is like a retired brush. It's an expensive brush, but, I mean, you can just kind of see it there, that it's not straight. And the bristles don't end in a tip, in a fine point anymore. So I use this when I'm gonna be messy and I know that I'm using paints in a particular way that would destroy a brush, because I'm like, this brush is already dead, so I don't have to care about it. Oh, and you're talking about cutting metal sheet models. You totally could. If you get a set that's just that you're only going to use for cutting metal, and you don't care about like how precise they end up afterwards, I reckon you could totally use something like this. I would go for a cheap set in that case, but I'm not sure exactly which ones people use. Okay, so you can see what I'm doing here is I'm actually using the blade, but I'm not cutting with the blade. I'm sliding the blade across the surface and cleaning up some of the bits where the where I've cut the plastic. So I'm just smoothing it out. This is like deep in this Space Marine's crotch, so no one's ever gonna see this. So I'm not gonna do a great job here. I don't really have to. And the nice thing about this as well is that the mold lines, or the join as well between the two halves of this, is nearly entirely going to be covered up by other parts of the model. So what I like with a lot of these is they've been designed in such a way that you don't actually have to do that much cleaning. This bit here I'm definitely going to clean though, because it's the point of contact between two pieces. So I don't want stuff getting in the way. I want a nice contact between these. I have so many tools which are just like cheap throwaway tools that end up being things that I use heaps. Old toothbrush. So when I've cleaned this stuff, there's often little flakes or dust or powder of the plastic on them after I've done this scraping. And an old toothbrush works really nice for getting rid of that. Okay, so I'm gonna glue those two pieces together. Here's the plastic glue. Oh, I was gonna say the plastic glue difference from normal glue. Did I say this? I don't think I did. The normal glue, normal super glue sticks things together. Plastic glue doesn't stick things together. It actually works like a solvent, like an acid. It's not technically an acid, but it melts the plastic. So it turns the parts of these models back into a gooey kind of nearly liquid state. And then you put them together, and when it sets, they bond together like they were always one piece of plastic. So it's a like really, really easy to use glue because of that, because like I'm not going to do it as a demo or anything, but I could cover my fingers in this stuff and pretty much nothing would happen. Well, that'd smell pretty bad. Like it's a solvent that can melt plastic, so it doesn't smell nice at all. I don't know how well you can see this, but there is a cat hair inside this piece. You know what? I think the cat hair is completely contained inside this piece, so it's staying in. This is pretty funny. This is like one of the worst things that I have about having a lovely cat like Chicken is that when I'm painting and modeling, like the cat hair is nearly like my cat's hair is nearly as long as this model is tall. So if I get cat hair on things, I always have to like grab my tweezers over there and peel them off and stuff like that. Oh, Hamish is asking about the survey results. I think Halogen's a little busy. Um, Also, talking about the competition that we're putting on eventually. I know that Hamish and Zach are both super busy as well, so they're slowly working on that. It might be something that we might shift to summer instead, because then we know that we've got a lot of time to work on it while while people don't have other subjects to do. But then we may still end up getting it going this term. We'll see how we go. I've also kind of like, to be honest, like this term I've not been working as much as I could be. I mean, I'm not going to say that I'm not working as much as I should be, because like I did a lot of work over the last few years, as most of you know, because most of you have been, I don't know what I'd call you, technically the clients at my work. And so you've seen the results of my work, and hopefully it's paid off. But it's been a lot of work, and I'm just sort of at the moment still in this kind of recovery mode from like this sort of long-term fatigue, and trying to just sort of mentally deal with it. So I'm not putting in the kind of effort that I had put in over the last couple of years at work. But I think that's okay, right? Like I'm supposed to be taking a bit of a rest at the moment. Yeah. Tawaka said chicken. Is chicken here? Did chicken come past? I don't think so. I think she's hanging out with my partner at the moment. Okay, so you can see that I'm getting that line. I don't know how well you can see it. Like, you'd probably have to zoom in a fair bit to see it. I'll hold it up closer, but we're reaching the end of the focal length. Wait, one second. Let's, oh, Tawaka's saying about the cat hair, yeah. Okay, so let me get my focal depth really close. I don't think I can get any closer than that. But maybe you can see the line there. It's really hard to see. I'm looking at the camera feed and seeing if you can see it. Like, I can see it really clearly here in person, but I'm not sure if you can see it on the camera feed. So what I'm doing is I'm just dragging the blade. So I'm not cutting with the blade, I'm just dragging the blade across the surface. And what that's doing is it's picking up that extra tiny bit of extra plastic that's basically escaped the mold, call them mold lines, and scraping it and just removing it. So pretty gentle. I'm not changing the surface that much or anything like that. Sometimes I will actually carve into the surface depending on how obvious the mold lines are. But a lot of the time it's this like kind of really light scratching on the surface to get rid of those mold lines. I'm not going to build the whole model now. Like, it depends how long the stream is going to be. If I plan it, you know, to be like a Marc stream that goes for like 4 hours, I could potentially do a whole model in that time. But I have these other ones set up ready to go specifically so that I don't have to do that. Because I think definitely on the building side, you don't need to see me build the whole model to get a good understanding of what's going on. So I'm just going around the edges of this leg bit here and making sure that anywhere where there's a mold line is smooth, and that's pretty much done. There's also the internal bit there, the internal bit of the cable and the internal bit of the leg there. So let's see if I can get into that. There's another thing that people do when they're building, that they will often not build the entire model. Because if you don't build the whole model, it means your paintbrush can reach all the bits of it more easily. But it also means you're painting a whole bunch of these little separate pieces. So you need to make the decision about how many different pieces you think you can paint, versus what can you reach. I'm not going fully detailed on these models, so I'm building a lot of them in one go. So you can actually see this one. Let me show you the one that's painted. It's easier to see. This one here, there's this gun that's across the chest, and underneath the chest there's like this very detailed, this thing they call an aquila, which is the the Imperial Eagle. And I'm not going to get any detail on that thing, because I'm not going to be able to get a brush in there. But I've made that choice. In this particular model, I've made that choice to say, I'm not doing it because I'm trying to go fast. Oh, I don't know if I actually changed the focus there. I realized I didn't click apply when I was showing you the leg. And I've already carved all the bits off it. That's alright. I wonder how close we can get. Okay, let me actually do it this time on this one. Okay, that's changed the focus so we can get... Has it? Has it? Okay, let's not bother too much about that. But should be able to see that vertical line down the front of the leg. I'll clean that one up as well. It's most obvious on things like the knee, on these rounded sections when you get a mold line. You also got to be careful how you clean it, right? Because you don't also want, with this scratching, you don't want it to end up being a flat surface if it's a rounded surface. So sometimes I will go and just kind of carve. It's not really carving, but sort of the area around it so it's smooth. Also kind of makes me laugh a lot of the time when I'm working on these, that like put all this effort in and then these things are like these marines are about 40 millimeters tall, I'd say. So I mean, you can just see the size of my finger versus the pieces that I working on here, that your ability to even see anything that I've screwed up in this is not, there's not going to be much, right? So I'm going to get away with a lot once these things are on the tabletop. Michael's asking which factions are my favorite. So my favorite factions, if we're talking specifically Warhammer, I like the orcs, because you know how I was saying before that I like to laugh at Warhammer? I think Warhammer is actually like, they call it grimdark, which is like this kind of the future that's like all kind of broken and stuff. But I like the orcs because they don't really care. They're just over the top, a little bit silly, and they all like basically speak like English football hooligans, and I just really enjoy that kind of feel, that aesthetic, because I have this thing where I don't like to, I mean, like, I say that with the irony of knowledge that I put a lot of effort into these things. I still don't like to take my hobbies too seriously. You know, I want my fantasy to be a bit like actually fantasy, bit of a joke, and a bit of fun rather than getting too serious and getting too caught up in things, because I feel like I get too much of that as it is. Like that turns things into like work, you know. Oh, I'm doing something funny here with the glue, because the glue tends to get, and then it clogs it up. So what I do is I put the uh-oh. I don't know if you can still hear me, but my video has completely frozen, and I'll wait for it to start again. And I wonder if this is exactly the same thing that happened last week. Because remember this happened last week? And my graphics card just went, I've had enough for now. But really I'm fine, and I'm totally just about to reset. But I'm gonna have a moment. Alright. I think I know what's going on here. That I'm not sure if my graphics card's fan was running. But having said that, no, the temperature is not doing anything bad. It's like in the 30s. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely happened before that my graphics card just goes, oh, you know what? I'm I'm gonna have a rest. I was like, why are you doing that? It's like it's weird because I can play games for hours on end and the graphics card doesn't die, but when I'm streaming, it just goes, I wanna have a lie down. Are we good? Still in focus? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. It's something to do with OBS. So I'm often not even running hardware encoding, but still weird issues. Okay, so this is going on this base. I like to sometimes use these molded bases, so you can see there's like girders and cables underneath and stuff. So sometimes like I use these, especially if I'm doing like an army with lots of models in it, because that way I don't have to worry too much about how much effort, time and effort goes into the bases. So when I'm painting a large army, I don't want to put time and effort. I mean, I'll put time and effort into it, but I want to get lots of models out of that time and effort. So sometimes when I'm painting, I will paint like one model for like 3 weeks. And that's something I could enter into competition or something like that. But this particular army, because it's like a Warhammer army, it takes like you end up needing like 50 models to play. And I'm not going to put 30 hours into 50 models. That's just like, meh. Yeah. So, these go a bit quicker. So usually, actually, this set of 3 I would have done in one go. So I build them all, spray them all, and then paint them all. And even when I'm painting, I would get like one specific color that goes on all 3 of them and paint that color across all 3 of them. And then paint another color across all 3 of them. They call it batch painting. And it definitely speeds up the process. Okay, where am I up to? Here, and then we have the gun. I reckon I'll do the gun and the arms, and then we'll move on. I couldn't quite get the clippers into this one, so it's cut off with a piece of the plastic on it, but I should be able to get to that now that the sprue's off. Every time I cut something like that, like I know I'm probably going to have to clean that up as well. Okay, so there's one piece of the gun. And then the other part of the barrel. That is totally off screen. If I put my elbows on the table, then you're not going to see what I'm doing. Alright, so here, glue that together. Is that bit of paper on screen? Not super important, but there's a little bit of paper there that I kind of squeeze the glue out onto. You don't have to. Like, you can put the glue straight on the model, but I think I've seen enough. I've seen enough to know that you want to make sure the glue's flowing nicely out of the nozzle before you aim it at your precious models. Because a big gob of glue on one of these is just going to, like, as I said, you know, it's a solvent. It's actually just going to melt the detail on the model. So, alright, we've got that. And we've got the 2 arms. 57 and 59. Where are we? 57 is this one. 59 is this one. There'd probably be other options for these if I wanted to. I don't have to do exactly this setup. But I'm not stuffing around too much with this set. So some people like never build it by the instructions. They acknowledge that the instructions exist, but they will do something so that their own models really, really stand out from the standard models by having their own kind of bits and pieces and stuff like that. Oh, Nick's saying sometimes you use the back of the knife for glue. I know people do that. They use like a little bit of plastic or a piece of cardboard or something to put their glue on things rather than trusting the nozzle of the glue itself, which I can totally understand. Donna's asking, how did I get started with painting? So, in the beginning, I was a big board games person. So, if you know, like, the current crop of kind of famous board games, I guess the ones that are coming up a lot are things like Settlers of Catan, I guess. That game has survived through, I don't know how many years of, I would say, being superseded by newer and better games, but it's still like the most famous of that trend of European board games. For me, it was Dominion that got me into it, but we got deeper and deeper into that, and a couple of friends were like, let's try one of these miniature games. Like, you know, for a lot of us, it had been like, we haven't played these things since we were like 12 years old. And so we got into this one called Infinity. And Infinity was actually really interesting. It's one of the hardest ones for a modeler, because all the miniatures are a smaller scale than these Warhammer ones. Like, only a tiny bit smaller, but they are a smaller scale. And they're all made of metal. So I was singing the praises of the plastic glue and how easy it is to get things to stick together with it. With metal, you don't have that. It's just harder to do. So we jumped in the deep end like that. And started painting in just a, I don't know, I guess a kind of simplistic way where we were just like, let's just buy the colors that we think we want for our models, and then just start painting them and see how we go. I actually still have some of those early models. Let me grab one or two from the cabinet behind me to show you. I'll go grab them. I'm gonna have to move Chicken Cam, but she's not here right now anyway, so she won't mind. Where's my... Trying to find the earliest ones. Here's one of the earliest ones. It's even a little bit dusty. You can see here. What's my focus level? Alright. That'll allow me to get closer. So it's kind of, I should apologize as well, like, I have used the old Imperial Rising Sun symbol on the base, and I didn't really know back then when I was doing that how openly offensive that is, so I probably shouldn't even be showing this on stream. But yeah, so let's just pretend there's no base on this, and I'm still showing it. Yeah. You can see how everything's kind of a shade of grey. It's not really that detailed, and I didn't have great kind of color differences going on there. This, I think, looks... I mean, you can also see the scale. See the scale difference, how much smaller it is. But just the amount of definition that I've got in the more recent ones, you can kind of see that. It's sort of obvious. Let's... Chicken Cam's still kind of aimed at where Chicken may be later. So, I think as time went on, I started to get kind of... started to learn more about the specifics of how to paint. There's the simplest way to think about it. Just checking if that focus stuff was even changing anything. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe I wasn't confirming any of those changes. At the beginning, just grab stuff and paint it for fun. So, paint, like, if you're playing any games or anything, like, a lot of people get into it via D&D because it's simple. There's one miniature that you need to paint. Just smack the colors on however you want. If you want to learn techniques, there are plenty of people on YouTube showing beginner level techniques. A lot of people who I'm actually like friends with now after having kind of watched their YouTube, and for some of them like subscribe to their Patreon for a while and stuff, and then paint with them in a sense. There's a lot of people out there who will show you the basics um, in a nice way so that you can get a good understanding of it. A lot of that's actually free as well. So even just watching Warhammer TV has a lot of historical videos which are just like, okay, do this, then do this, then do this. And they actually do it at a really kind of basic level. So they don't talk about stuff like airbrushes and like specific kind of expensive brushes and paints or anything like that. They just go, look, you can do it with this simple stuff. So learn the simple stuff with the simple tools and then move on afterwards. Like once you've got an idea of what you want and how you want to do things, then you go do stuff, just do stuff that's special and individual and amazing and stuff. But otherwise, you know, the basic techniques, they're all kind of the same. I'll show you some of them today. So what I'm doing now, cleaning and building and stuff like that, that's pretty bog standard for any, have I already cleaned these? I totally have. Yeah. These are pretty bog standard for any, like, these multi-part miniatures. But you can totally get, like, miniatures that are not multi-part. You can get miniatures that come in a single piece. And that's much easier if you're not into, like, the whole, like, epic construction side of things that I'm going into here. Because you can already see how long this takes. Because, like, if I were to build this whole thing... granted, I'm talking at the moment, but I've been building this thing for like half an hour. And it is pretty close to done, but not quite. Like, there's still plenty of work left to do here. There's also the thing you gotta remember is that, like, stuff costs money as well. I don't mind if this thing takes me ages to do, because this box of 3 miniatures is like $70. I'm just like, you better last. Having said that, they've been sitting under on my desk for like 2 months, so, you know, this is a good excuse to actually finally paint them. It's the last models that I need for my army for this tournament. And I wasn't sure which models that I wanted for the tournament, so it took me a while to actually build these. Can you hear that? I just heard chicken meowing in the corridor. What are people saying? Nick Sims, obligatory thin your paints. That's the thing a lot of people tell people when they're just starting out, is that the paints come in the pot in what I would call a mildly concentrated form. And so usually when we're using them, especially if we're layering up color in a careful way, we will thin them with water or a painting medium of some kind before we do it. Antarctica, is that a sleep reference? I didn't know. Antarctica, what is sleep? Oh, right. No, they're talking about bands, not actually sleep. Nick Sims, historical, i.e. done by Duncan. Yes. there's a guy who painted for Warhammer called Duncan Rhodes. He actually has his own YouTube channel now since he left Warhammer. And I think he taught a lot of people. He taught a lot of people a lot of good stuff over the past kind of like 5 to 10 years, I guess. I actually don't know how this... He may not have been there for 5 to 10 years, but still, he became the kind of the figurehead for Warhammer painting for a while. Until he left the company, he moved on to other things. I think he just wanted to go solo, actually, so it's him and just one other person putting out the same kind of videos now. Oh, and Halogen's saying, yes, you can be the opposite, liking construction, but not painting. Yeah, I swing very much towards the preferring painting to construction, because I get my artistic expression out of the paint. Whereas some people, you know, the joy is in building these things. So I think that, personally, if your joy is in building stuff, Gundam is totally the way to go, because they're molded in color. So you can literally build them and go, I'm done. You know, I'm not I'm not going to put paint on these things. I'm going to just have this, and it's going to be colored the way it ought to be right from the beginning. And that'll be fine. I'm going out on a limb here and gluing one arm on with the gun and hoping that the other arm is just going to work. And it totally isn't. Alright. So this is the funny thing when you've got two arms and a gun. So you've got multiple contact points for the glue, and it all has to come together. I'm going to need to stick everything together on the model all at once and hope for the best. I mean, I think this will work. It was just a tiny bit off, and if I put some pressure on there, the glue stays gooey for at least kind of 10-15 seconds, so that's enough for me to go, yeah, all of those contact points are good. That's fine. If I wanted to, I could get this to like hold up further, but for the moment I've got him just aiming his gun kind of down like he's walking or something. Tuaka said definitely construction over paint. Railroad modeling as well. I've seen a lot of that stuff because I go past Hobbyco a lot in the city because, you know, Hobbyco is like joy. It's like the biggest toy store. It's so good. And I see a lot of stuff with trains there. I actually have a lot of stuff that I've bought from the train building stuff, and I use them as bits of pieces for like scenery and things, and stuff to even go on these models in a sense. Oh yeah, Nick was talking about Hobbyco. So yeah, Gundam. I think depending on how epic you want to get with Gundam, you can actually start off with Gundam with like a really cheap kit, like a $20-$30 HG kit. They call them high grade. It's like the lowest grade they've got. They call it high grade. There's high grade, real grade, master grade, perfect grade. And so it's just like this kind of thing where it's just like, do you want a large chips or a super large chips? And it's like, can I have a small chips? Oh no, that doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. You know? So like you could get into that and like just build that. And I think that's actually quite fun, you know, just building a kit. I personally take a lot of pressure, take a lot of unnecessary pressure when I'm building kits because I'm a painter. If I build it without painting it, I feel like it's incomplete, and that's like that's my own problem. That's my own psychological problem. I will have to deal with that eventually. Okay, so this one here would probably go on this base. So sometimes I place them on the base depending on like, you know, where I think they're going to be aiming, where I want the, like, if I want them to not stick out too far from the base. So if I put this really far forward on the base, it's leaning forward already and the gun's forward. This looks overbalanced forward. So I'm pretty sure I want this with its feet nearly at the back so that the head ends up somewhere around the center of the base. These are just sort of random artistic decisions. When you're doing something like this yourself, you can kind of do it however you want, you know. There's no specific rules. Stuff I'm going to show you today is just like, it's just the way I like doing it. It's not, it's no hard and fast. Also, the way I'm gluing this to this base is very much based on which sections of this base have good contact points for the feet. So I've got them on the big flat sections instead of standing on the little girders. This glue can handle the little girders, like, it will still hold on, but, like, I figured, might as well make it nice. Okay, so that one's coming together. Like, I've still got to put a head on it, some shoulder pads, and a backpack, but I'm going to leave it there. Put this one to the side so I can move on to doing a bit of painting, because I think, you know, I did call this thing painting miniatures, didn't I? And so, like, do want to get onto that stuff. All right. So I'm going to put this one over to the side here. Pull out one of my palettes and swap my tools. So knife and cutters go away. Not going to be using them anymore. If that thing was built, what I would be doing usually is get my air filter mask. So it was really funny having a whole lot of these when COVID started. But these aren't necessarily the ones people are using that much for COVID. This is a thing to stop you inhaling things rather than stopping you spitting disease on people. And I've got, I don't know which camera to show it on. I'll show it on the big camera. Some spray paint. This is kind of expensive, the spray paint, compared to the, you can just use cheaper spray paint, and there are particular companies and particular types of paint that work. I still just use this stuff because I've been using it for years, and it's the stuff that Games Workshop sells, so I just end up using it. So yeah, what I do with these models, one of the best and cheapest tools I ever got was an offcut of wood that I found in my apartment after someone had finished some renovations. And they just left it in the stairwell, and they're like, we don't need this anymore. I was like, can I have this? This is really useful. This has got like years of primer paint on it. Like, the paint is so thick, you can see how shiny this piece of wood has gotten from it, and the different colors that it's been. You can even see where the bases of the models have been. So I will blue tack the models onto this, head out onto my balcony, and spray paint them. I'm not going to show you that process because I had enough trouble getting my camera rig set up here, let alone following it out to the balcony. So what we're doing is we're just leaping forward in time to me having prepared one earlier, as they say. And then we'll work on this one now. So we've got this one here, freshly primed. You can even see the grey plastic underneath the base. Bit of blue tack. I like using handles when I'm painting my minis. I'm actually just take the handle off the handle, because this is going to get... it's going to be, like, with this thing, I use it sometimes if I'm going to lean on it to do detail work, but for the moment I'm going to take it off so that you can see things better. I may put it back on later. So I'm just blue tacking this thing to the handle. So the thing that I like about the handle is that I don't have to touch the model. Touching the model can have a series of different repercussions. If the paint is still wet, repercussions are obvious. You'll smudge the paint that's already on there. Other times, just getting your finger oil on stuff changes the quality of the paint, or even gets between the primer and the paint, because you really want the paint to stick to paint. And if you put finger oil on things, it doesn't stick as well. And you won't notice until months later when you drop a model or something like that, and when you drop it, bits of the paint come off, and that often means that the primer coat wasn't perfect, or something else has happened. When we're using metal models and stuff like that, it's even more annoying. Because when you use like the primer doesn't stick as easily to that, and so they chip more easily, especially like the metal's heavier and harder, so it chips the paint more if you drop it and stuff. What are we talking about there? People talking about building stuff. Lego, expensive, low on shelf space, so you do nano blocks instead. Oh yeah, totally, I could see that. Someday you will afford the big Lego kits. Let me... 1 second. Can you see it? Red 5. Luke Skywalker's X-Wing. I don't know how long I've had this, but it's definitely years. Sorry, I gotta blow my nose. I've just been kicking up a lot of dust. Alright. Yes, so that kit, that kit's been sitting around for years because I also don't have space for it. Like, I'm like, I don't, like, oh, no. The phone is not secure here. Fine, I'll just... Okay. Yeah, I don't have space for that. I was gonna say, I don't have a display cabinet big enough to fit that, but I do. I've just filled it with miniatures. It's just got a few hundred miniatures in it instead. So, yeah. But yeah, the big Lego kits look like heaps of fun. And I've built a few of them. I have built one bigger than that one. I have the Lego Death Star. So there's a Death Star that is it's like a diorama of all the different things that happened in the Death Star in the movies. You know what I'm gonna do? Oops, drag the wrong one. I'm gonna move. I'll go in that corner. Chicken can go in the bottom corner. Just because on this side of the screen, there's a few things that I'm going to be doing with brushes and water. So this is my water cup. This is the what's known as the risky cup, because I'm like over here drinking out of like I'm just drinking some Ribena, which is really bad idea when you're painting to have colored water, and then you're about to put color in this water as well. So I'm going to drink this now. It's very, very rare. It's very rare to pick up the paint water cup and drink it, but, you know, it has happened. Okay, so I'm going to go for that nice metal finish that I have there. I've actually, on my other screen, I'm totally cheating. On my other screen, I have my recipe. So I've written up exactly which paints I used for these, because this army has taken me over a year to paint. And so to get the whole army looking like they all, you know, they all have the same armor and stuff like that, I use my written down formulas all the time. So what I'm doing is a particular technique here that is using an ink. So this company is Scale 75. They do pretty cool inks as well as pretty cool metallic paints, and so I'm using these for this part of it. I love inks. I have more of them. Different brands, different colors and stuff like that. They're different from the acrylic paints that we're going to use. Like these are the paints, so these are thicker. You can see I've got ball bearings in these to shake them. This one here is the funniest. Like, listen to this. I don't know if you can hear that because I put one ball bearing in it, and this one is really thick. So I put one ball bearing in it, and it got stuck. And I didn't realize it was a ball bearing in it, so I put another ball bearing in it, and it got stuck too. And there's 3 ball bearings in this one little pot of paint. What is this? 17 milliliters and 3 ball bearings in it. But now it doesn't get stuck anymore. So it's pretty funny. Yeah, so you can see how 3 different shades here. So this has got some black in it. All 3 of these are metallic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the dark one. And I'm going to paint most of the armor the dark color, and then as I brighten up into the brighter colors, less of the armor gets painted and more of the top surfaces get painted. A lot of what we have to do in miniature painting is this kind of simulation of light. Because it's really kind of weird, because you think about it, it's like, why don't you just paint the things the color that they are, and they're real 3D models, so they'll just get lit by normal light. The weird thing about it is light works differently at different size scales. And so what we're trying to do is paint this so that it looks like it's at a different size scale than it actually is. That's why we end up sort of painting light onto the models, in a sense. I'm not doing a huge amount of that here, but the idea of it still carries through. So, mixing the dark metallic paint with the blue ink, you can see that I've already done this here. So there's the dark one, there's the one in the middle, and there's the lighter one. These are the 3 passes that I'm going to do on the armor here. So, first, 1 drop of this stuff. My recipe calls for a 50-50 mix, so it's going to be 1 drop of each. I think that I just want 1 drop. Always afraid that the ink pot's a little dirty. I'm always afraid that I'm going to get a huge chunk of dried ink in there or something like that. Okay, now I need to mix that up. So I'm using a brush that I don't care about. So this is just like a cheap synthetic hairbrush. So there's like the different qualities. Like, so for example, this brush is like a $5 brush. This brush is like a $25, $30 brush. And like this one's smaller than this one. Let me take the lid off so you can see it. But this is a Sable Brush. Sable is the butt hair of Siberian weasels. It's very, very high quality. Maintains its shape really well. Paint flows off it really nicely as well. So it's like really, really kind of like specific. This isn't this brand's made in France, but there's a famous brand, which is this one. I don't know if you can read that. Windsor and Newton Series 7 Finest Sable England. The Windsor and Newton company was created to make paintbrushes for Queen Victoria. So, oh yeah, that's another thing I do. I lick them because they're natural hair, and so the natural fluids actually keep them in shape really nicely. You don't have to do that, by the way. If you're intending on learning how to paint based on what I do, sticking the paintbrush in your mouth is a choice, and it is not something you have to do. I just have to say that. I'm still going to do it all the time anyway. I prefer not to stick the brush in my mouth when there's paint on it. I will usually have washed the paint off it before it goes in my mouth. Alright. So this is the mix. So the ink and the metallic paint means it takes on, the metallic paint takes on the color of the ink. So it's this nice, rich, dark blue metallic at the moment. Just rinsing that brush out. I'm very violently rinsing this brush against the side of the cup here. I would never do this with one of my nice brushes, but I know that the synthetic hair doesn't care. The synthetic hair is really, really strong and resilient, so it can take it. Alright, this is the secret weapon for this. Those of you who wear makeup regularly will know this is an eyeshadow brush. I use these for this particular form of painting, which is known as dry brushing, but this isn't exactly dry brushing, but it sort of is what I'm doing. Where what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this brush wet with that paint that I've just mixed, but then I'm going to paint off a significant portion of it onto this piece of tissue paper. So you can actually see what I've done previously on the one I prepared earlier to get this kind of finish. I'm going to take you through the process though, but I'm going to get rid of some of the paint there. So I'm going to pick up some of it, like enough to get pretty deep into the bristle. So I'm actually twisting that a bit. And then I'm going to dab heaps of it off. And I'm going to go for my model now. And this is the bit where I'll actually bring it in focus so that you can see it. And I'm not going to be super careful with this. So if I miss and I hit other parts of the model, like the floor and the weapons and stuff that aren't going to be the same color, I don't mind. I'll deal with that later. I can paint over that. In fact, there'll probably be a portion of this tonight where I will go back with a black paint and kind of bring some parts of this model back to the starting point, in a sense, of being black. But everywhere where we have this armor on this model, I'm going to make into this dark blue metal. And that's what I'm calling my base coat. You can see I'm not being too careful with this. I'm kind of like, as it is, I'm using a brush which is like bigger than the model's head, right? So no detail at this point. Not trying to do anything fancy or special, but you can also, if you look at the way that I'm using this brush, I'm not going easy and I'm not working it too deep into anything. So what I'm going to get is that naturally, we're going to get this effect known as ambient occlusion. So ambient occlusion is the idea that light kind of gets into places, but it doesn't get too deep into places where it can't reach, in a sense. So a lot of light that we see is light that's reflected off other things. So if I don't work too much into the cracks here, then the deeper cracks that I can't get into with this brush are going to remain black. So it's nearly like I'm getting free shadowing out of this process. So you can see, like, in the bottom bits of the backpack there, I don't know how well you can see that. The blue metal's not getting in there. You know what? Let me just... I don't know how much difference this is going to make, but I have a feeling I'm going to up the exposure a little. This is technically overexposed now, but it'll mean you can see things a bit clearer. So I don't know if that's better or not, but I think that you'll be able to see what I'm doing clearer because I've just got it super bright now. Yeah, so I'm just continuing this all around the model where it's the armor suit. It's pretty funny actually if you've painted other models and see me doing this. This is super fast compared to oh, everyone's saying this is much better. This exposure is much better. Jim, hello. I didn't know you were. Wait, how did you know this was even happening? Everyone, this is Jim, friend of mine who is a miniature painter. I didn't know that. I didn't really publicize this as a miniature painting thing, because I think for a lot of people who paint miniatures, this is gonna be pretty boring. Because I'm doing the super basic stuff. Like, I'm not showing off anything special. Oh, you just found it randomly. Yeah, because I didn't think, like, this is me. Hello, Jim, and hello, everyone say hi to Jim. Jim is, like, someone who I've painted miniatures with in the past. And we used to go to competitions together back when they were still possible to run. And, yeah, so these are all my students, Jim. These are the people who I teach. I teach computer science to. Yeah, so this is the kind of dark color, and I think I've got everything. There's a little bit under the arm there, but I'm gonna get away with that because if you look at the way that this model might be viewed, that bit under the arm there, it's never gonna be seen. So I'm gonna get away with that being mostly black. So bits that I can't reach that are black, this technique works quite nicely. I'm not going to clean this brush off because it actually kind of keeps transferring into the next part of this process, which is a brighter metallic mixed with the ink. Jim saying, so you'll enter the next CanCon painting event. So next time CanCon happens, which is going to be January 2022, I assume. That's where all the painters in Australia, well, not all the painters, heaps of the painters can't necessarily make it, and some of them are playing games and stuff, but that's the kind of big get-together once a year for the miniature painters in Australia. So Jim and I have both been going to that for a few years at least. You've been there longer than I have, Jim. I think I've only been to the last two CanCon painting events. Try to get the right amount to drip off this, but this is so dirty. I think I need to clean it. Which also means now that I've done this, that's my blotter paper has now been sacrificed, and it's gone through the blotter onto my fingers. Well, that just shows how dirty the cap of that was. Alright. Gonna have to get a new... I just use tissue paper here, like it's nothing special. Should put Chicken Cam back. Although I don't know where she is. Hopefully she will be back soon. Oh, you've been going for about 4 years, so I think I've technically been going for 3 years, although 1 year just... We don't talk about 2020. Even 2021 didn't happen. But I mean, it was January 2021. Alright, so I'm going to mix this up, and you'll see, as I mix this, how the color is different, because I'm mixing the same blue, but I'm mixing it now with more of a silver than a gunmetal kind of color. And so this is getting us a really... nearly like a bright, vibrant blue, and this is going to give me a stronger blue than that base color. But what I'm also going to be doing with that is being a bit careful to not paint bits that I think should be in shadow as this bright blue. I want this bright blue to be the bit that is reflecting light, or the bit that's clean and stuff, so not in the cracks and stuff. So just cleaning off my brush there, and I will take this new color. So I haven't even cleaned this brush, because part of this technique with the makeup brush is the brush is dry, and that's a really weird technique, because usually we try to keep our brush quite wet, like even like moist to the point of wet, because if we let it dry too much, it damages the brush and the paint doesn't come off smooth. This is coming off nicely just because of the technique is to not have the paint come off smooth. It's just have the paint to come off on the bits and pieces where you want it, and to catch the edges of things. So you can see how I'm not really contacting the model as much as I was in the previous pass. Like in the previous pass, I was contacting the model a lot more. Now I'm just catching parts of the model, and you'll see how some of it is coming up this bright blue, but I'm intentionally leaving a lot of parts of the model not the bright color. So the bits that are extended, sticking out, they're going to get this color. Even just sort of dabbing it a little rather than painting it on as such. But this is the... There's a cat hair there. Oh yeah, the tweezer's out. Hang on. There we go. There we go. So what I'm doing is I'm layering up this color like this, so that the strong blue is the kind of the bits that look like they're really going to reflect the light, and the darker blue is in the recesses. And the bits that I kind of want to draw attention, like around the head and the shoulders, that area are getting heaps of this, so they get the richness of color. Whereas the underarms, the insides among the backpack and stuff like that, they're barely painted. They're this kind of gray blue, not this kind of rich blue that I'm getting from parts of this. Also, not too worried. Some of this stuff I'm obviously going to have to repaint, because some of the stuff is stuff that's not meant to be blue. So, like, I've painted parts of the gun here and stuff, but I'm going to get away with that. I'll paint over it again later. Jim's like, this model looks huge. They are pretty big. These are the big boy Space Marines. So, the new, the Gravis armor that they're calling it, which is like, I'll put it next to a normal. This isn't even normal. This is new normal Space Marines, which are the smaller Space Marines. Sorry, the bigger Space Marines. So you can see this. This is your Chad bro with your giant gun, and this is like the normal, the normal guy. Okay, so now we have. You can already see how it's like. I could actually leave it like this if I wanted to, and say this is my armor. The beauty of the metallic paint is, like, I don't have to paint it really nicely. The metallic paint, as you can see, is going to capture the light and reflect it, and it's going to give itself its own nice shape without me needing to actually do much with it. But I am not done. There's one more pass here, which is the really bright silver, basically. And to get this to work, I actually need very, very little of this ink, because what I want to do now is like catch edges and surfaces and stuff like that in something that's nearly silver and really catches the light and reflects it. So I'm trying not to get a full drop this time. Just going to put bits of it next to it there, and I'll mix that in. Apologies, the focus is not on the palette, but for it to focus on the model, I need the focal length a little bit higher off the table. mix this up, and you can see how, looking at the three here, how all three of these are slightly different color from each other, but not different enough that they're going to cause a real, like, kind of distraction where they go from one to the next, but they're kind of going to blend into each other. You can't really tell by looking at it which bits I've painted with the new color and the old color. You'd have to look really carefully, which is the point. I want them to kind of flow into each other. So we go in here with the new paint, scrub most of it off here, and now this time I'm going to be looking for edges and surfaces from above. They're going to catch the light. So corners of this backpack here, this trim on this shoulder pad, and around this neck. Oh, sorry, I'm just covering it up there. Every now and then I'll look up at the camera and then I'll be like, okay, people do this when they're streaming? I've watched lots of other people do paint streams, but I've never really done it myself. So yeah, this part of it is a bit more subtle. You can't really see what I'm doing here, but it is brightening up some parts of it. And I'll try to get like this around the feet. There's all these ridges, so I try to capture some of that with this silveriness. Okay, that's quite nice. I've actually got way more paint than I need, like having to mix it up one drop to one drop, and I've used like half of a drop at most here. But it's okay. I'm getting the look that I want out of this, and so you can see already that like I've done literally like one color in a sense, which is just the blue metal, but it already looks really nice, doesn't it? Like just the way it catches the light, but also has color. So this technique is what I use for this army because it's so fast. But we're not done. We're not done. Because at the moment, it's very, very clean. Which is fine, but we can add more nuance to this and make it interesting. So this is where the color theory comes into it. So I don't know if people have ever seen a color wheel before. Let me, does this scene work? Sort of. It doesn't have my face in it, but, which screen is that? That screen. Okay, good. Many different images of color wheels here. So in art, especially if you've ever done any... Oh, I just tried to enlarge it and got a smaller one instead. There you go. Let's just... Uh-oh. Oh, no! I can tell my stream's about to die because my mouse stopped moving. I don't know if you can still hear me or not. Let's give it some time. Are we back? Are we back? Hello? Am I back? Alright, my graphics card. Okay, I can understand. I can understand graphics card, and I apologize. You're supposed to just be gaming, but what Marc is doing is like 3 different cameras, driving 2 monitors, and trying to stream off one of the monitors at the same time. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. But I think I'm back now. So the color wheel shows you just kind of a representation of the relationship between colors. So the blues that I'm using are like this darkish blue, or this other blue here, and on the opposite side are oranges. So I use this a lot, and you can see how I've used this. Let me go back here. You can see how I've used this where I made the base rusted metal. So I got a lot of orange in the base so that it is the opposite of the blue that I've used on the models. I'm going to do that at a subtle level here with shadows, basically like local shadows in the model itself. Using this stuff, they call it Seraphim Sepia. Games Workshop has really funky names for uh all of its colors, because it likes to name its colors after characters and places and stuff in Warhammer. Also, I think that this is a way for them to sue people who use the same colors as them, because they use their trademarked names as the colors. Okay, so this stuff that Games Workshop makes is called a shade. So it's like those inks that I was using earlier, but it has less pigment in it, and it's made to flow into cracks. So when I put this on the model, it's not going to sit on the surface so much. It's actually going to sink into cracks, and it's going to deposit most of its pigment wherever it can find something to sink into. So it makes it really easy for doing things like, you know, accentuating the creases in things, for example. All right, brush I'm using here, it's a small one because I'm going to use it for like just sort of doing some like panel lines and stuff like that. But it's also like an old dead brush. So it's not what it used to be, but that's fine because the shade is not going to be it's not going to be gentle with it, because the shade, because it's so liquidy, and how I said, it flows into cracks and deposits its pigment there, which means it flows up the bristles into the metal bit there, and when it deposits its pigment in there, the brush is never the same. Brushes tend to lose their tip because of dry paint in under the metal bit there, under the ferrule. So I'm actually going to be soaking this brush in this shade. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out all the places that would kind of collect dirt. So in here, in the gaps behind the leg there, in between these sections, in the cracks between the foot and these armor plates and stuff. And so what this thing is going to do, this Seraphim Sepia, which you can see is like this kind of dirty brown color, is literally going to put dirty brown color in heaps of this. So I can even, if I want to, I can let this kind of drip through some of these areas. Not only that, it has a double benefit. The other thing that this thing is going to do, because my metallic paint, as you can see, because it's mostly dry already, dries shiny. This stuff does not dry shiny, it dries matte. So what I'm doing is I'm ensuring, by putting it in all the crevices and cracks and stuff like that, that anywhere where I think should be shadowed isn't reflecting light anymore. So that's the beauty of doing this. You start with the metallic, and then I go, these bits should have dirt in them, shouldn't be shiny. This, once it dries, this shade paint is going to make those areas not shiny. So it's kind of like only the bits that are out and catching light are going to be bright. So you can kind of see the definition I'm getting on that knee pad there now that it's brown in its cracks. And I'm going to put heaps of brown in underneath the arm here to make it simulated kind of look like this is much more in shadow. So some bits of it look like dirt, some bits of it look like shadow. I'm going to use the same paint for both. The nice thing is that the not only does it look like dirt, but having the brown on the blue means that those are actually strongly contrasting colors on the color wheel. So it means that you will notice the shadows are obvious. A bit more in there. What some people do with this, which you totally can do, is rather than doing it in detail like I'm doing, like picking out where I want it, some people will basically cover the entire model in this stuff, and it'll sink into the crevices. It will darken the entire model, but it'll sink into the crevices. And then what you do is you can go back to the dry brush afterwards and then pick out things again that you want to be shiny. So you can totally do this in the different order that I'm doing it. I just happen to be doing it this way because um, it's slightly less work if I do the ink afterwards. But also I have the risk of, like, if I paint over an area that should be shiny with this shade paint now, I am gonna have to go back and touch up. But I'll get away with it, because even if I make mistakes at this stage, it's just gonna look like he's dirty. He's a big soldier boy. He's going out to war and stuff, so he's gonna get some dirt on him, and that'll be fine. So there's like this whole whole school of thought on how to paint these models. It's like, do you paint them like they're on parade, you know, like they're at their best and at their shiniest, or do you paint them like they're in the middle of a fight in some kind of war-torn far future planet somewhere, that you make suggestions of what that planet is by what you put on the base of the model. And so if I say they're in the middle of a fight, then, you know, they shouldn't be looking pristine and clean. So I can do them so that they look a bit dirty. And I'll get away with it. And I'll get away with a lot of my mistakes being like, oh, no, it's fine, they're just dirty. BT, did the brush taste good? If the brush has any taste on it at all, then I have a problem. So hopefully when I lick the brush, it has been cleaned. If I taste anything on the brush, then it's too late for me by then already. Like, what kind of acrylic do you want to eat today, Mark? None, thank you. I mean, at least I use, like, nearly all acrylic paints, so they're going to come back out the other end as plastic. I'll be fine. That little thing on his arm there, I will probably end up painting a different color. But I'm going to shade it for now, just in case I don't do it. I've been known to forget those things and just be like, oh, oops, was that important? Oh, well. This studded shoulder pad is like a throwback from, like, early 90s Warhammer, basically. So I put that on as a specific quote to that era. As is the helmet. The beaky helmet is the same era. So there's a little bit of a story behind this particular Marine. It's been alive for, I don't know, that would make, according to the lore of Warhammer, make this particular Marine having lived through hundreds of years of constant warfare. I can't say it without laughing. Alright, so that is it for the blue armor. It is now in some places shiny, in some places grimy and dirty, and the grime and the dirt looks really kind of specifically different from the shiny blue. What else should I do? I should move on to the next color. So, two most predominant colors on this particular set of models, as you can see from here, is the metallic blue, but the red. And the red, I do a matte finish rather than metallic so that it comes up different. So I get like this contrast, not just a contrast in color, but a contrast in the shininess of it as well. So I take the shine off on the red bits by using a matte paint. So here's another one. This is a reasonably famous brand of paints amongst the sort of, like, I don't know if you call high-end painters, the painters doing very kind of display model stuff rather than gaming stuff, but I love it. I mean, like, should admit that I do paint display model stuff as well. So, like, that's stuff that's, like, you know, you spend a long time on it, and it's very much more sort of an art piece than a gaming miniature that's just there to represent something on a tabletop. What I'm painting today is just to represent stuff on the tabletop. That doesn't mean I'm not gonna use my fancy toys if I have them available. I was just cleaning my my dry brush there in the water, and it has like severely tainted the water because the makeup brush, it's so much bigger than the other brushes, just holds so much more paint. So what I'm probably gonna do before I start doing this red is change my water. So I'll tip this out and put fresh water in there because I don't want my red to come out metallic and blue. But yeah, so I've got this red, and I'll show you the tools that I'm going to use in this next section. Uh-oh. Just dropped a bunch of stuff. I don't know how well you can see this. Now the exposure is too high. It's good for the model up here, but it's bad for the palette down there. But this is what we call a wet palette. Just trying to move stuff to this side of the desk without destroying everything. So, you can see how I'm actually quite systematic with my colors here. So this is nearly like a color wheel around the top arch here, and there's grays across the bottom. But also like this mess of fluoro purple and stuff in the middle. But, you know, the palette's there for mixing. So this is a piece of paper. It's not normal paper, but it's like a particular kind of palette paper. And underneath that is a sponge. And the sponge is wet. So it's soaked in water. I was using it yesterday, so I don't have to redo it now. It's already wet. Which means that when I put paints on this palette, if they're water-based paints, which are the only ones I use here, they're going to stay usable for much longer. When you're painting in summer in Australia, you really, really need it. Because stuff just, like, if you're using my other palette here, which I was using, this is just a piece of plastic, right? It's just molded plastic. I'll use that for the metallics because I don't want the metallics to get watered down for that process that I was using with the dry brushing. But with this red paint that I'm using, which is actually here already, this rich red that's here, so I may not even need to put this on the palette. I do want to water this down because what I'm going to be doing now is layering on the red in little bits and pieces. Having said that, there's actually not much red on this model. I just looked at it, it's like, where is it actually going to be red? Because Crimson Fists, it's going to have a red hand. So we're really just going to be doing the hand red. And then we'll be moving on to like doing some more details and stuff, which I'll probably hop across to the other model to do that. But I said I'm going to change the water because, as you can see, I do not want this water affecting my red. There's so much blue pigment in that water, it will affect the red. I'm back. I didn't actually say that I was going then, did I? Just walked off. So yeah, I've got clean water again now. As you can tell by how quick that was, my bathroom's right next to my room there, so I just tipped that out and then refilled it. Oh, actually, give me 1 sec, I'll be back. Sometimes when I tip out paint water in the sink, I need to make sure that it didn't paint the sink. We good. We good. Nick was asking what people saying. Oh, Nicole said that's very much adequate. Thank you very much. I think that was back when we were looking at the finish of the blue armor. Jenny is saying the paint water looks so good. It looks like a fancy drink, doesn't it? Yeah. Jim's like, I can imagine the lectures. Mark just walks out mid-sentence. I don't think I've ever walked out. I think at one point I had to go shut some doors because my partner was having like a meeting in there and I could hear it. And I was like, oh, that's going to get to the microphone. I need to shut the doors. But I think that's the closest I've gotten to like walking off. Michael and Jenny want me to drink the paint water, I think, but we're not going to do that. And Nick's asking you about the wet palette. I actually use a particular brand called Masterson's, which is just like an art company, and they make their own paper, and the paper is really, really strong. Like, you can scratch this with like a palette knife that people use for oil painting and stuff, and it'll take it. It's so good that you can actually take the paper and wash it underwater and wash excess paint off it and then reuse it. Because as you can see, this is gonna get coated in paint over time. And you can also see that I don't clean it off very often. So some of these that are like months old, if I put a bit of water on them, I'm probably going to be able to get color out of them again. I'm not going to do that at the moment. I'm going to keep my brush pretty pure right now for the red that's there. But the red was getting painted with on Saturday, I think. So I'm pretty sure that with a little bit of water, so I'm just wetting my brush. It's one thing that we often do with this is we get the brush wet first. Because if there's water in the bristles, then that mixes with the paint nicely, but also means that the paint's not just going to dry on the brush. Because dry paint on a really fine, detailed brush like this is going to hurt the brush. So we don't want it to ever dry on the brush. So I get a bit of water there, and I see what my red paint's doing. It's a bit thick and gluggy, because it's been there for a couple of days on the wet palette, so I'm going to give it more water until it gets down to the consistency I want to use. I realize now why the paint streamers have a separate camera for their palette. Because at the moment, yeah, it's just here in the background, but it's gonna be a bit out of focus there. So I'm gonna clean up my brush because I dipped it in a little bit deep in there, and I don't want the paint getting into the ferrule. Alright. Got this here. It's now a thinner consistency than it comes out of the bottle. And I'm going to start painting this onto the hand of the model. So you can see, I think, show you this guy here. You can see the left hand is red. Right hand isn't, but the left hand is. That's the standard kind of Crimson Fists thing. But this one here has two red fists, and this is part of the kind of story of them, is that they can paint the second fist red once they're a veteran. So once they've been around for long enough and seen enough, then they paint the other fist red. Actually, considering the story I said for this particular Marine, maybe I should actually paint both fists red, because if it's someone with that helmet and stuff and has been around for hundreds of years, maybe they are a veteran. I'm not sure. I'll paint this fist red first, and then I'll decide. So here is where you see me now. Like, look at the difference between how I'm painting now and how I was painting before when I was dry brushing. Now it's all precision. It's all just like, I'm trying to get this color really exact in the right places. But also you can see it's not fully covering. Like, some of the bits are bright red, but not most of it. Most of it, you can still see the black through it. So these paints, they start off translucent, and I'm not going to try to get full coverage in one go. I think that's, you can sometimes, but not usually red over black. So if you try to get full coverage in one go, you can end up painting extra texture onto the surface of the model, and it gets gluggy and stuff like that. So with, if you're painting on a canvas, totally go for it. I think it looks cool to see the texture of the brush strokes on a canvas. Like Van Gogh, it's like all about that. It's so cool. But on a miniature, if you start doing that, you're gonna lose your surface detail really quickly. So that's why my paint's actually significant percentage of the paint is water. And I'm going for enough coverage so that maybe 2, but more likely 3 or 4 coats on this. And then the red will be where I want it to be. I've very rarely done this on video, so I hope it's working. friend of mine's teaching a course this weekend, actually. There was going to be a painting event in Newcastle on Sunday, I think. Obviously, that's not happening. So I think she's doing her class online via Discord. So be interesting to see what her camera setup is for this. There's not much red on this model, but at least it's in this really prominent position. So the Crimson Fist is really on show on this guy because the handle of the gun is up on the top of the gun. Probably shouldn't have done what I just did there. I just painted over a section that I'd painted before. The paint's also getting a little thick there, and I think I just lifted up one of the layers. I didn't give it enough time to dry before I painted over it. I'll potentially get away with it, though. A couple of very thin, watery layers over that should smooth it out. Nick saying that you really want to try that ink and metallic thing. It's so fast, isn't it? It's like so fast. If you consider how long it's taken me to paint this one hand, compared to how long that took me to get a really nice finish over like most of the surface of the model, it works really well. You don't have to do it with metallic as well. Like you can do what I did there with whatchamacallit, with normal paints as well, but they show up more easily. Okay, so I'm switching to the black here because I've realized I have painted parts of the gun that I did not want to paint. There's actually a bit of the blue arm there that I've painted red, but I can't get that back. I'm just gonna let it go. I'm just going to say that if you can see that, then you're looking too closely at my models. Not a competition model. So in the time it took me to cover one of my models in the blue, Nick saying that he got some feet painted. So yeah, it is that method I was using. It's very fast. What do you reckon? What do you reckon, chat? Should this person have 2 red fists or 1? Usually the 2 red fists is reserved for veterans, but this guy's also wearing a helmet and a shoulder pad that implies that he is a veteran. It implies that he's been around for a long time. I think looking at how much red there is on the model and is going to be on the model, it might be worth it. Also, it depends on what I do with these pipes. I could do a whole lot of like bright colors on the pipes, and then that would balance the color. But I think I might go for the red. Let's do it. Nick saying Beaky's the special. Let's let this Beaky be special. You can see how I've actually painted that hand already. I've actually painted it with the blue, expecting it to be, whatchamacallit, expecting it not to need to be painted over with red. But let's go for it. Once we start, we're all on, because this red, like, if I was going to try to reverse this red, I would have to go all the way to black again. I had to paint over it entirely. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to commit. Oh, it's hard to get in there, isn't it? This is the downside of building stuff before you paint it. But the rest of it that's behind there, I'm just going to be like, oh, it's in shadow. Can't see it. Notice I'm washing out my brush a lot. These valuable, expensive, natural hair brushes. I mean, like, if you've literally got to pluck the hair out of a weasel butt. Also totally not vegan. Totally not vegan. I don't think that they're just capturing these weasels, plucking their butt hair, and then letting them go again. Pretty sure the weasel's already dead. I have been looking at using synthetics instead. But the downside is just the way the paint like flows off the natural hair brushes is just, it's just better. It's really, really bad that we can't do this without annually murdering thousands of cute little rodent-like creatures. I'm now painting bits that no one will ever see. I'm reaching into the back here to paint the wrist. I think I'm gonna let that go without too much effort because I think that it's basically invisible. Like, I'm painting in there because I can reach it with the brush, but that doesn't mean that anyone's ever gonna see it. I don't know if you can see the difference between me going with like slightly thicker paint to get the first layer down, and then it's really thin down the next layer, which just gives it a smooth covering afterwards. Okay. So, I still need to paint the other fist again a little bit. It's not quite smooth yet. So as I said, I thought it was going to be 3 layers, so I haven't done the 3rd layer on the left hand yet. Basically on the flat surface, it wants just a little bit more to even it out. Doesn't have to be super even though. Like, I'm gonna get away with it even if it's not, because as I said before, if it's not perfect, it's just a bit dirty, you know. It's in the middle of a war zone. Another layer on there. You're gonna laugh at this, right? Because I'm getting this to this beautiful kind of bright red color, and I'm about to like destroy it, and then come back and do it again. So what I'm gonna do is actually that same inking thing where I'm gonna use the ink to accentuate the crevices between things and the shadows and stuff like that, and then come back with the red and go over it and brighten it up afterwards. Gonna need the red to dry before I do that, so what I'm gonna do in the meantime is let's do that holster. Oh, actually no, let's do some stuff with the silver. Just put the lid on my wet palette there. Come back to my dry palette with my like destroyed old brush that I'm gonna use for metallics. There's one thing that I forgot to do on the metal, and it reminded me of it when I saw the studs here, and the studs, I want them to be not blue, I want them to be like a silver metal, like they're like separate pieces of metal sort of bolted on. So I'm going to take the brightest metal that I had, the silver. This one's called speed metal. Oh, they've got funny names, these. It's like black metal, heavy metal, speed metal. the names of the colors. Got a bit of a sense of humor there. So, going to get some of this silver, and I'm going to paint most of it off onto the tissue paper. But now I can put like silver bits on here to make this look like a different kind of metal. The other thing that I can do now with this silver is I can make it look like this is metal armor that has been painted and has like scratches in it and stuff, because like, again, middle of a war zone, things should not be perfectly clean. I know this is kind of like not exactly how it works, because I don't know what their armor. Their armor's made of this thing called ceramite, which, by the sounds of it, is some kind of ceramic. So me doing metal chipping on it doesn't entirely make sense. But you know what? I painted them with metallic paint as well, which also doesn't entirely make sense. So I'm just gonna roll with it and see how we go. So yeah, I'm putting like kind of scratches and stuff on this anywhere where I see like corners and edges and stuff. So it's been bumping up against things and like losing a bit of its blue metallic paint on things. So it kind of makes it look cool in the scratches and stuff, but also just makes all the edges catch a bit more light when I've done this. So it's cool like that. There's actually a divot in the model there. So I'm going to make that more realistic by going, okay, if that's a chunk taken out, let's pretend that a bullet's hit it or something. Again, where I've made a modeling mistake and I've carved a piece out of the model by accident. This kind of weathering technique is going to make it look like, oh, look at the detail he went to. He went and carved pieces out of the model to make them look like bullet holes and stuff. It's like, no, that was just a mistake. But yeah, so I can do this kind of roughness here to make it look like, you know, it's been lived in, it's been bouncing around and stuff. The paint has scratched off bits of it. You can see the results of that. Like this one's got a fair bit of bits and pieces that are a bit silvery and stuff, and then also other bits which I'm gonna do afterwards around the feet and stuff, which literally have like dust on it to make it look like they've been walking through that dusty area. Like the one on the right doesn't have that yet. You can also see the one on the right's hands look way too clean. So we'll get to that. We'll dirty it all up, make it look like it's been in a war zone. This is a similar kind of thing before as like the dry brushing. This is like dirty dry brushing, whereas that was clean dry brushing. Again, kind of destroying the brush, but I'm allowing the paint to dry a bit on the brush so that it comes off rough. Oh, see you, Jim. Good to see you. I might also start painting these pipes. Although I think with these pipes, they're going to go completely silver, so there's no point me doing little bits of silver here. I'll do them as if they're like fully metal. Don't know how well you can see that, but the getting the edges of the shoulder pad to catch the light and the edges of the elbow bits here. So you can either read it as scratches or as the corners of things reflecting more light. Alright. A little bit more detail now on the armor. Now we're going to get these shadows looking nice on the red fists. There's different options here. Marc is heading off also. See ya. Good to see ya. What are we now? Oh, we're at 2 hours. Actually, we've done heaps, which is cool. I'll do like a little bit of detailing as well after I do this next bit. Okay, so I'm using this thing called Agrax Earthshade, which is another dark brown, but it's darker brown than the last one that I used. I don't know if you can see the difference there. So one of them is like an orangey brown, and the other's like much closer to black. And I'm gonna do the same thing that I did on the armor, but this time I'm gonna do it on the hands. And this is gonna darken it up a lot, but that's okay because I kind of want these darker than they are. They're supposed to be crimson. Crimson's like red with like a little bit more blue in it, so shifting it towards the purple shade. This isn't blue, but it's very dark, so it's going to get a similar effect. So you can see me putting it on there like that. And then it flows into the cracks. And it'll make them shadowed. I might actually put this across the entire surface so that it darkens it a bit. And this is going to give it a lot of definition. So I don't know if it's reflecting too much of the light there, but you might see the fingers getting a bit more definition because of the dark pigment which is now flowing into the cracks there. People like to call these shade paints liquid skill, because what you can see is like it would take a great deal of precision to paint the creases in between the fingers, but having a paint like this which flows into cracks just makes stuff like that so much easier. It's like less of a struggle to get a lot of this stuff done. So it's going to darken all of the crevices there. It'll take a little while to dry, this stuff. But once it's done, the fists themselves will be darker. And the cracks will be even darker. And them getting darker means I can actually go back with the red afterwards and brighten them up again a little. I just saw a bit that I wanted to work on with this silver paint. Still wet, which is good. The Aquila here, I want this Aquila in silver, so I'm actually going to paint parts of it here. That's a little bit too much paint. I'm still doing the kind of mostly dry paint here to catch the upper surfaces of things. Right. If I skip over to this one, you can actually see the result of the brown ink in the red there, where the red has its edge taken off it compared to the other one, but it's also kind of got more definition in it, so it's got bright bits and dark bits and stuff. This one's got the actual chapter symbol on the shoulder there as well. What are we talking about there? Izzy's turned up, came for the painting. What figures are these? These are Warhammer 40,000 figures, and Ryan's asking me the faction. These are the Crimson Fists, who are a particularly kind of historically significant chapter of Space Marines. They call them chapters, because they're the ones that were on the cover of the very first rulebook of Warhammer 40,000 when it was first released. So they occupy a very particular space in the Warhammer 40k lore. Okay, I'm gonna take this one off because it's gonna need some drying time for the ink on the fists, and I'm gonna cross over to that final model which I'd prepared earlier. I'm gonna do a little bit of detailing. So what I think I might focus on is the gun. So we're going to do some greys and some silvers on the gun. We might do these purity seals here as well. So actually don't think I can do the gun. I was going to do the gun with my makeup brush, but the makeup brush is still wet. It's not going to do any dry brushing anytime soon. Also, still blue. Let me... You can see from that camera, you can actually see how my camera is set up. Like, I've blue tacked one of my webcams to my overhead light, which is actually kind of works really well. Works surprisingly well. I do have a couple of other makeup brushes here. I've got this like little portable one, but it doesn't quite do the same thing as that one, but I think it'll do enough. I thought I had another one. Where would it be? No, if it's not amongst my stuff here, it obviously didn't work out very well. Yeah, that'll do. So, I'm going to use the same kind of dry brushing method for the grey casing of the gun. So some parts of this gun are going to be metal, and some parts of it are just going to be like a matte grey. You can see the idea here, where there's metallic parts which are going to catch the light and reflect it. So stuff like the barrels and the magazine here and stuff. But this casing here, the rectangular casing, is just grey. I actually don't know if I'm going to need this brush. I might do it with another old kind of used brush here. So this one was like one of my best brushes for ages, but they just age. And so you can see, even with the application of saliva, this one's not holding a perfect tip. And also once it starts painting, it's going to lose that tip pretty quickly. So what we're going to do is use that in a kind of a dry brushing way to turn the black on that gun casing slowly grey. So I'm using this dark grey here. They call it Mechanicus Standard Grey, and I'm going to guess, yeah, I'm going to guess that this spot on my palette was this color previously. I don't need that much of it. And again, I'm actually going to paint off a lot of... So this is actually me sort of showcasing mostly dry brushing technique here. Got to decide which bits of this are actually going to be grey. What I'm also doing is giving it a particular grain by painting everything in the same direction. So if there are any brushstrokey lines and stuff here, they're all going to be going in the same direction. So it's going to look a little bit like a brushed aluminium or something. I don't think you'd make guns out of aluminium, but you know. Who knows? Who knows in the year 40,000 what materials they're using? Not going to put too much effort into the back. I feel like it's barely going to be visible. Alright, so there's a bit of black to grey. And then I will hop over to a lighter grey here. This one's called Dawnstone, so you'll see how I'm, like, it's not hugely different, but it'll be different enough that some parts of it that I paint with this color are going to come up different. I'm going to guess that that's the... Oh no, it was the wrong guess. It wasn't the same grey. Maybe I don't usually use this mid grey. Oh no, it's still there. It's trying to figure out if this is the grey that I usually use. This time, with the lighter grey, I'm using the side of my brush on the corners of things to try to not necessarily paint the body of the gun, but I'm just painting the edges of the panel this time. Is that still on screen? Your favorite snack paintbrush? Yeah, the brush has ended up in my mouth a fair bit today. But I do admit that is something that I do. Like some people use like painting mediums. I find saliva to be reasonably effective. So I'm focusing the lighter color around the edges. Anywhere there's a crack around the edges of it, that kind of thing. Do some more on the front. Will that do? Don't know yet. No, I'm gonna go one brighter. Up to nearly white. So looking at these three, I'm going one shade further. This one I'll be a bit more careful with. I think I will use a smaller brush. Or I might actually switch to my good detail brush. If I was being really careful with this stuff, I would actually be mixing between these colors and doing doing kind of like layers of each, or like multiple in between stages and stuff like that, but I'm not going to that level on this model. I forgot to paint the top, which is awkward if like the bit that's like facing the light, facing upwards, is the darkest bit of it. Okay, so I've got my bright gray here, and I'm just gonna do things like the tips of the corners. This is a technique known as edge highlighting. What it does, especially from a distance, is it brings out the definition in things so that you can see pretty clearly what the shapes are, even when this thing is tiny. So heaps of this is I'm using the side of the brush to catch the corner of things. It's really hard to do this in these cracks in between though. It's very relaxing as easy. That's nice. I'm glad. It's kind of like when you think about all those years that everyone tuned in to watch Bob Ross painting. Okay, so there's my gray. A lot of the rest of the a lot of the rest of the gun is gonna have metal. So I'll need the lid back on here. I'm gonna use my metals now without mixing them with the blue ink, because I don't want them to be blue, I want them to be metallic. And so we're gonna take this barrel here, which looks like nearly looks more like a flash suppressor than a barrel, but this is actually like, they call it a melter gun, which is like, who knows what it actually is, but they talk about it in the rules as being like basically a long range microwave. And so they use these things to basically melt armor. So this is like particularly sort of anti-tank units. So I'm going to get my black metal here. Gonna water it down a bit. I'm not too worried about the red in the water at the moment. I think the black is gonna overrule that. And then I'm gonna paint all the bits that I think are gonna end up metal. So this whole section. And there's gonna be other parts of this gun that are going to be metal. I'm going to make this handle at the top metal. I don't know why there's an iron sight there when there's a handle directly behind it. I don't think that sight's going to be useful for very much. I think it might be purely aesthetic. I'm going to make this handle metal as well. What are people saying there? Sulux, hello, how's it going? Just finished session 1 of a D&D session with some mates. Killed 2 people in one turn, then immediately got knocked out in the same round. Roller coaster of emotions. I had a really funny death for a character once, where it was a stealth character and a character that could like I think it was a bard, so it was like stealth but also the ability to manipulate people's minds. So before we went into a dungeon, I snuck in there on my own and did a full recon of the area, nearly got captured, talked my way out of it, escaped again, and then got back to the rest of the team and let them know what we were up against. And we're like, sweet, this is great, this is going to be easy, because we know exactly what's going on in there. Went back in, and then we got into a fight, but we were prepared for the fight. We knew exactly what's going to happen. And then through a freak series of rolls, my bard tried to like sneak up on people and backstab them, failed miraculously, got killed, and then failed all of the final survival rolls to try to survive the killing, and then that was it. I lost my character, who had like literally mapped out the entire dungeon in stealth, was so good, and had pulled off that miraculous feat, and then just died in a really routine combat afterwards. Yeah. It was so funny actually, like after the rolls, and my DM was like, do we want to retcon this somehow? Like this feels wrong. Like for such a heroic character to just suddenly die. And I was like, nah, let it go. Let it go. Let the dice let fate rule. And then he was like, he put on that song, the bagpipes. I remember it was like the Highland March or something, and then we all stood up from the table and saluted my character, and I like tore the character sheet, and it was like, that was such a funny moment. I thought it was really good. Actually, I'm gonna make all of this metal. I'm gonna try not to paint over the hand though. Oh, Halogen, you're very connected to your current character, are you? Zero, I don't think it was Amazing Grace. I think it was like a Scottish bagpipe thing. Because the bard, that character was a bagpipe bard. Because I was taking the piss. Alright, so we've got some metal on the gun there. This gun's going to need some other color on it to look interesting. But it does have a scroll on the side, so we'll do that in a different color. Alright, so bit of metal, but it's not bright enough yet. So we're going to then start highlighting it. So we've got the mid-silver here. I actually don't know if I need the mid-silver. My recipe over here says I didn't bother. I just went for the bright one. I'm going to go back to the bright one. I've wasted a bit there, but it's, you know, probably better to have these looking consistent than it is to just use the paint because I put it on the palette. Okay, so some of these bits are going to get really bright. Again, doing a similar thing to the edge highlighting. This bright silver can really catch the light, so I don't really want to go overboard with it. So I might do things like paint these protruding bits. Sorry. Gotta get back on camera. Paint some parts of this barrel as well. I could kind of paint the whole thing, but I don't want to make it too bright. I'll probably try to do something interesting with that barrel as well. I've seen people do whatchamacallit? I don't know if you can hear that. My stomach is grumbling. I feel like a midnight snack is gonna be on the cards. Except I can't leave the house. That's okay. That's okay. There'll be something to eat. Alright, so a little bit more nuance in the metal there. You know what I might try? I might try a thing that I've seen people do. Is since this gun is like called a melter gun, it means it's been used to fire off really hot beams of microwaves to melt things. I'm gonna try to do a heat effect on the barrel. So I've seen people do this kind of thing before. I know that I'm gonna need some potentially inky paints of different kinds to do like a kind of a heat effect. Just gonna look up some pictures of it. Make sure I'm doing this the right color. Because I know it's like it goes from like purple to blue to brown kind of thing. So I'll get my Seraphim Sepia here, my brownie kind of color, and I'll paint that on from about halfway. I didn't use enough. It's having like no effect so far. It already kind of looks cool because it's like you can see the front of the gun's kind of darker and dirtier, but like for it to look like an actual heat effect, it's gonna need some blue, I think. Oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take this blue. Don't know where to put it on the palette. Gonna get it going before the brown can dry. So that way, if it goes on before the brown can dry, it's gonna mix in with it. I think it needed it more watery than that. Okay, blue's a little bit overpowering. Sort of okay though, sort of working. I'm going to do this purple. Put it all on while the paint's still wet. And so the brown, purple, blue combo is hopefully going to make it look like heat stress on the metal. That kind of worked. It's the first time I've done this. I don't know how well you can see that. Let me, I'm gonna need to change the focus. So, it's reflecting too much of the light, but you can kind of see now that the barrel looks discolored from the heat. Oh, Toby, the camera is for Chicken, but Chicken's not here. I don't know where she is. Alright, that's pretty cool. Where are we at right now? 10:40. Been going for a while. Toby's saying painting miniatures make it seem like you'd get into 40k pretty easy. It does. It's quite exciting. It's quite easy to kind of, once you can get them looking pretty cool, you're like, oh, this is interesting. I could really get into this and stuff. The game's very different from the painting though, so it's not the same thing, but they do kind of go hand in hand. People love to see a fully painted army. It's always fun to see a fully painted army. If you start playing, you're gonna kind of, after a while, gonna want to start painting things. So I think it does kind of cross over. Okay, so I've got this off-white color here. I think that's it on the palette. Yeah. I try to put them in the same spots. So at least I'm a little bit organized. So anything that I want to have like a bright color afterwards or particular effects, I'm going to use this color on. So there's a little scroll on there. Wait, sorry, I'm still on the super close in focus. let me set that back. Okay, that's the focus where you can see it again when I'm working at that distance. So I'm going to paint the scroll in this off-white so that I can then make it look a little bit like paper. Which is weird, because paper has no business being on the side of a gun. But we don't question these things, we just 40k. Sorry, 40k is the colloquial term for Warhammer 40,000. So we'll end up saying it a lot. Again, you can see I'm trying to be really careful here because I put effort into that grey. So I don't want to have to repaint it black and then come back again. I let that paint get a bit dry on the brush, so I got a bit gluggy. A lot of the sort of long-term skill that you develop for miniature painting is balancing how thick your paints are with your needs. So a thicker paint's going to give you more coverage, as in, like, you won't have to paint as many times to get a color affecting another color, in a sense, because all these acrylic paints are, like, inherently, like, a little bit transparent. But the thicker the paint is, the less smooth it's going to be, which makes it worse for whatever layer on top that you're going to try to do afterwards. I'm going to, this little rope here holding the fist icon, I'm going to paint that with this as well. Only a bit wet, so that it runs into the cracks more easily. Oh, too wet. And then with this being this off-white color, I can decide afterwards what color I'm actually going to paint it. You can kind of see the result between these two parts that I've just painted, the ropes and the scroll, how the ropes weren't, the paint was too wet on the ropes. So all I've done is run some off-white paint into the cracks, rather than getting the nice coverage that I got before on the scroll. So just gonna mix some thicker paint into this while it's still wet. So I'm trying to get the best of both worlds here. More coverage, but an even coat. Where is it? There it is. Oh, right. Toby, you didn't realize there were 40k. I get it. I get now. I get what you were saying now, that it would be pretty easy to get into 40k from painting miniatures. Yes, definitely. These are going in my army, actually, which is a Warhammer 40k army of Space Marines. These are the Crimson Fist Space Marines. I'm using this this paint, which is like this Citadel, again, the same brand, contrast paint, which is actually very similar to these shade paints. So the shade paints are designed to flow into the cracks. Contrast paint is designed to flow into the cracks, but also color the other surfaces. I find this one, it's called Skeleton Horde. It gives you a bone kind of color. I'm not using it for bone here, but for this parchment, it always makes it look really good. So once I put this on the parchment, it should give it some really nice sort of definition. Or you can already see it there, how it's like darkened the center bit, but on the edges it runs away from the edges, so it doesn't darken the edges, so it gives it some nice definition there. I've used a little bit too much liquid, so I'm using the brush now to just soak up some of it. Yeah, and so that little scroll there is going to look quite nice like that. I need to decide what color the little bit of rope is there that's holding the icon, but I think I'm going to need another coat. Another coat of the off-white color before I can do that. When you want to go out on a limb, you then write something on that scroll. So you can get a really small brush and a really fine hand and hope for the best. Sometimes they use like really, really fine tip marker pens for that kind of thing as well. I'm going to need to wait for that to dry. I'm thinking yellow for the rope. It's like the little decisions you make sometimes. It's just like, I don't know what color should be here, but there's so little color in that area of the model. It's all grays and metal and stuff like that, that like a little splash of color there could be good. I mean, there's obviously the red already, but a little more color might be interesting. Otherwise, that weapon is complete and ready to go. So after that, I would do things like the face. I say would because I think this stream's probably going to need to end soon. But yeah, the face, as you can see, hasn't been started. The purity seals here, the cables on the back. But other than that, oh, also there's the little wrist computer here, the little thing they call an Auspex. I would definitely be painting some of that stuff with things like fluoro green to make it look like glowing electronics and stuff like that. I wonder how dry that is. Usually blowing on it doesn't help. It's like, how are we gonna dry it? Let's blow moist air on it and see what happens. Oh, actually, I don't want to use this one. I want to use this one. This may look orange, but once you paint it on, it goes yellow. It leaves that orange pigment in the cracks and yellow on the surface. I just need to give that a bit more time to dry, I think, before I can do that. Actually, it doesn't quite look bright enough. I'm going to go again with the off-white. I was trying to avoid having you wait for me while I just sit around and watch things dry. That would be as boring as watching paint dry. Oh, I forgot to say earlier, if people are interested, I'm actually giving a talk tomorrow for CSE SOC on debugging. So if you're interested in that, come along. It's on their YouTube, not on mine. But I've linked it in my Discord in case people are interested. Oh, Oscar is like, that's a Pip-Boy. Thanks, Nicole. Anyone who's still here. I can do this. Once we've got those little ropes there, a yellow color, I think that we'll wrap it up. You can see how I've got the holster there done as well. That's actually two shades of brown, one kind of scratchy over the top to make it look like it's leather. But yeah, this is nearly done. I mean, there's still plenty of work to do on the base to get it to look like this. You can see what I've done is actually filled in a lot of the base with what's known as texture paint to make it look like it's grimy and sandy and stuff. So this is my way of making it look like it's sort of been rusty for so long, it's like kind of partially decomposed. And then I get those oranges and yellows in there to make it look like it's actually rust. But I don't think we have time for that tonight. Oh, Nick saying I could rate your painting. I'm not sure I'm going to get time for that, because I think I'm pretty much ready to go with this yellow. Halogen's asking, how many sets of polyhedral dies do I have? So polyhedral, I don't have that many. I've got like, I've got one nice set. Hang on. Waiting for paint to dry. I'll show you. I'm going to have to move it. Oops. I'm going to have to break chicken cam. I thought I was just going to move it. Chicken has not graced us with her presence today. Sorry. Let me just turn that camera off. Which one is it? Nope, not that one. That one. Is this them? So I do have this one really nice set of dice. Anodized aluminium polyhedral dice from a company called Level Up Dice. I bought this set at the last, I'm gonna put them in order. I don't know if that's actually the right order, but I got these dice at the last GX that ran. So GX was the Queer Games Expo, and they had a special on the rainbow set of dice, and I thought that's awesome. So I got a rainbow set. I haven't used them much though, because I don't play RPGs as much as I play like miniatures games. Yeah, these are all CNC milled aluminium and then anodized, which does mean that all the corners, the color starts to wear off them. I don't mind it because I think that's kind of cool. I mean, like, to the fact that I paint stuff so that it looks like the corners are chipped. But yeah, they do a series of like these kinds of metal things, but then also whatchamacallit, precious stones and stuff like that, so they can get some really cool looks out of them. So that's probably my fanciest set of polyhedral dice. I do have some other dice. So, to go with this particular army, you can see these dice, metallic blue with red. They're like perfect. So I've got a whole bunch of these, and Warhammer's just D6s. So I've got a whole bunch of these to go with this army, and so it's a really nice combo. I like the semi-translucent shimmery blue. love to cause an impromptu dice segment. Yeah, so that's the dice for this army. I do also have a Warhammer Fantasy army, which is squigs, and I have these squig dice. You can actually see all 6 faces on the dice here. So there's the 1, the 2, the 3, and 4 are these 2 paws, and then the 5, and then the 6 is the jaws, like that. These things are so funny. They are made of lightweight rubber. So they rattle and bounce like crazy. If you roll them on the table, they escape. Like, they basically bounce away. Which I find, like, pretty bad for gaming, but also hilarious because that's kind of what squigs are. So squigs are these weird little, like, kind of homicidal fungus-based creatures that are, like, all jaws, and they're part of like the Warhammer universe, and it's like like they're just really funny because the dice are not functionally good to use, but they feel like they feel correct for the squigs because they're uncontrollable. The squigs apparently have a habit of like just eating their handlers when they get bored and there's nothing else to do. Nicole's asking, quick question, Mark, what keyboard do you have? I use a Corsair keyboard. Okay, I'm going to move this around. So that's my keyboard there. It's a Corsair R65, I think. The R being an RGB keyboard, as opposed to the K65, which I think is the standard one. But you can program all of the keys to light up. At the moment, it's lighting up in sync with my computer, which is on a blue and yellow scheme, which is like just colors that I like. And I've got the cherry red MX switches in it. So they're the switches that don't go click. They're the mechanical switches that don't go click, but they've just got this even pressure all the way down, which I kind of like. Anyway, those are some of my dice. I'm trying to think if I have any more, but I don't think I have any more special dice. Other than the ones I had for Warhammer Underworld, which is a particular game that I used to play heaps. I haven't played it in the last few months. I just sort of like I hit this point with Warhammer where I had to get off the wagon. I don't know if I talked about this before, about how it was like it was getting to the point of addiction where I was purchasing way more than I could use. So this stuff that I'm painting tonight, that I painted over the weekend and tonight, I bought it like 2 months ago and just didn't touch it. So I was reaching a point where I felt like I was on a treadmill and I was just purchasing stuff just for the sake of purchasing. And I was like, I got to get off this. So what I did was I said, I'm just not buying anything until I've actually painted a significant amount of what I already own. What? What? You were under there the whole time? She wasn't on the chair. She was under my desk. So she was hanging out with me, but just totally quiet and just hanging out there. But you're here now, aren't you? Come and say hello to everyone. Just like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I can't believe that, because she just walked out from under my desk and was like... So she'd been with us the whole time, just not sitting in her normal spot. What are you doing? Are you gonna sit here? Have a little scratch? Well, I'm glad she turned up by the end. Put that camera back up there. But aim it down a little. Is that gonna work? Kind of. Chicken, stop hiding behind the camera. Behind the microphone. Oh, look at that. Look at that. She's so cute. I love it when like you're patting her and she's just like, I love it. Aren't you a little sook? She was so angry at me today. She was following me around and yelling at me. Um, until like I made a cat-sized shape in the bed out of the covers. So I built a little cubby for her, and then she sat in that and she was there for like the next like 4 hours. But until that, she was just following me around, just going rah, rah. I was like, okay, okay. All right, so what I managed to paint just then was that kind of yellow color for the rope holding the holding the fist there. I don't know if that's a little bit too dramatic. That might be too bright, but you know, we'll see how we go. All right. With that, I think that's enough. So I showed you like the metallic painting. I showed you the red, and I showed you some detailing. That's kind of everything that I was doing. Zara's asking if we can hear her purr. She's actually like 10 centimeters at most away from the mic right now. She's like right there. Are you gonna purr, Chicky? I've got the mic on full and she's purring, but I don't think... Can you hear it? I don't think you can hear her purring. I'm trying to put it closer to the microphone as I pat her. Did you hear that? I don't know if you can hear it. That's as close as I'm going to be able to get. I boosted the mic as well while I was doing it. Oh, I can't hear it. Oh, noise suppression. Maybe, maybe. Wait, where's my noise suppression? I can't remember. Filters? Oh yeah, there we go. Alright, I've turned off noise suppression. I don't know how much difference that's gonna make. Cheeky, why don't you purr for everyone? She did one loud purr there. There you go. There's some chicken purring to close off the evening. Oh, that's good. Everyone can hear it. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Thank you for coming, everyone. And glad we got a little bit of an appearance from Chicken at the end there to say hi to everyone. We'll be back next Monday. Although if anyone's interested, tomorrow mid-afternoon, there's more of me. Much more academic, but still not super academic, you know. There's still a fair bit of like me talking about, like, I'm talking about debugging, but I'm talking about it non-language specific, non-technical. So I'm talking about the psychology of debugging, which is actually kind of interesting in a weird way. So yeah, come along tomorrow if you're interested. I think that CSCSoc may already have released the slides and the handout from that, but I'm not sure. Because I gave it to them and I said they could release it if they wanted to. But anyway, see you tomorrow if you're coming tomorrow. If not, see you next Monday. Don't know what we're doing next Monday. We'll figure it out later and I'll let you know. Okay. See you soon.